sense of life or death, good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Let's Talk Movies. I'm Brad.
And I'm Miguel.
And episode number 30 of Purely and Simply Evil, we are taking a deep dive into Mike Flanagan's Dr. Sleep, which, as far as I'm concerned, one of the single best sequels to a movie that I've ever seen in my movie-going experience. Fell in love with it from the minute I saw it. Of course, being the Soul sequel. This one is another thing that makes The Shining and Dr. Sleep interesting. Is like there wasn't like many of the other, or unlike many of the other horror franchises, there were no endless sequels to the movie. Like this is the sole sequel to The Shining, which is pretty cool to say. And unique in the fact that it came out 40 years after the original. So, but the sole sequel to Stanley Kubrick's 1980 adaptation of Stephen King's The Shining, which many would argue is the greatest horror film ever made. I don't know if I would make that argument, but it's up there. Yeah. So, not only are we doing this thing alone, but we are joined by some of our favorite people in our space. So, first up, Austin from SPC Unleashed. What's going on, my man?
Not much, guys. Thanks a lot for the invite. I'm really excited to talk about this movie.
Gonna be awesome.
Happy to have you, yeah.
Brett Man, he is a believer in Flanagan. I said believer, dang it, believer. He's
okay. Well, first off, I owe an apology. I have been seeing a doctor about my sleep, so I do apologize for sleeping to start the show. Yeah. So I'm working on it. I'm working with a doctor. Yeah. So
if we nod to Brett Man at some point, and he's over here just like.
I was kind of hoping the whole time. I was like, God, I really hope these guys really don't think I'm asleep. I've been listening the entire time. But no, I promise I was. But no, I'm happy to be here. Yes, I am a believer in Flanagan, and you'll get to know why tonight. So
we'll send the old crusty, musty, and dusty lady from the Overlook that gets out of the bathtub to. We'll send her.
Hell no!
Yeah, we'll ask her to give you a lap dance. It'll be awesome. It'll be great. Could you imagine?
No. Oh, let's end this conversation. Oof.
Our nightmare. Yeah, put it out right,
the lady
guys.
in the bathtub or the freaking bear?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Bear dog thing.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with the bear. Although that's weird. That's a weird moment. Every time I see that, like
lady now at this point, the bear is.
I know that it's coming
with the bear.
Yeah, I know that it's coming. We call him Miguel. I think we called him on the other episode the blowjob bear. The blowjob bear. Like, I need that on a
I probably would
t-shirt.
have said something funnier than that.
Or we could call him Man Bear Pig.
Oh
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Every time I see that scene, I just hear the Seinfeld theme song.
I just go Man Bear Pig, half man, half bear, half pig, and I'm so serial.
It's so strange because
theme.
every time that I go to that I watch that movie, I know that scene is coming. But it's like, as soon as Wendy starts to panic, we just go completely off the rails, and like weird things start to happen. Like,
well, it's
funny
the hotel
like
waking up, right? And they're just
right.
like, let's party. That's what we're getting now.
Well, but like, she sees the bear, and it like she's even like, what the like I'm being chased by my murderer husband.
Murderous husband, yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's the most random thing. But guys, thank you so much for being here. We've wanted to do this for a while, and trying to make schedules and things like that match up. We had a conversation about that. Sucks, but we're also going to be joined by Nick.
I just suck, but like,
well, it's all of us, man. My dad had surgery at 11 a.m. this morning, and like it's it's been like nonstop. He's all good, but
okay. Good.
We're also going to be joined by Nick from the Lost River Drive-In in a little bit. He's getting home from work, so he'll hop on here in just a few minutes. But we are taking a deep dive into Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Sleep. That I don't know if I want that. I'm glad we got Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, but I don't know. Yeah, we don't want that. Mike Flanagan's Dr. Sleep. As I said, this is one of my favorite sequels of all time. Not even just one of my favorite horror films, but I think this surpasses just being a good horror film. This movie it's a good story. As somebody, I'll get into this a little bit deeper in a minute, but as someone who was kind of a lukewarm fan of The Shining, it never blew my socks off in the way that I expected it to, I guess. Like as a young horror fan, I remember my dad talking about The Shining. I remember seeing people on YouTube and on social media and whatever talk about The Shining, and I was kind of like, when I finally saw it for the first time, it was like, what? Oh, that was okay. That was it. That it didn't really scare me. It was weird. I had a weird reaction to that film. Mm-hmm. But upon seeing Dr. Sleep, it completely changed my perception of that original film. So I've got a lot of love for Dr. Sleep. And boy, since we're talking about Mike Flanagan, I would be remiss in saying we've kind of danced around it, but we forgot to mention that as of today, Mike Flanagan is officially taking over creative control of The Exorcist. Like, can I get a hallelujah?
Oh.
Yeah, Miguel, we haven't got to talk about that.
No,
did you see that, Miguel?
No, I think I missed it.
Bro, David Gordon Green is out the door. Mike Flanagan has just busted down the door.
Really?
And
no
he's in like
sequels, an original film.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's surprising, honestly.
No legacy sequel BS. We are just we are pedal to the
That's
floor.
why you refer Gordon Green with like the legacy sequels.
Well,
it's pretty much what he has offered. Yeah.
I mean, bro was like, Halloween worked as a trilogy. No.
I know.
I don't know what
following the formula at this point.
So first of all, boys, two things. Let me pick your brain on two little topics here before we get into Dr. Sleep. So number one, how stoked are you for the Exorcist thing, and what would you like to see as an original story? Do you want it connected to the whole Reagan original Pazazzu thing, or do you want it to be its own separate thing? And also, the legacy sequel thing, are you down for that for Elm Street and Friday? Because that's kind of been in the news a lot too, with that whole the Friday the 13th Jason universe mess. We just did a video on that a couple days ago. Who the hell knows what that is? That sounds like Hot Mess Express. But what are your thoughts on all of those things? I know that was a lot.
As far as The Exorcist, I mean, it should just be an original story. I mean, I might be committing cardinal sin here, but I'm one of few people who actually didn't mind Exorcist Believer. I didn't think it was terrible by any means, but obviously nowhere near to the extent of the original, which personally, Exorcist 3 is my favorite Exorcist film. I personally think that's far superior than the original, but an original story, I think it's the way to go. But as far as Friday and Nightmare, I think the only way for Nightmare is to probably do a legacy sequel, but I wouldn't have it after the first. I would probably do it after Dream Warriors. Maybe actually bring the Dream Warriors back, tie in Nancy a little bit, not too much, to have it be too over the top like they tried to do with Chris and The Exorcist.
Yeah, I want Dream Warriors with 2024 special effects. Will be baller.
I am the Wizard Master.
Oh man, but
go ahead, Brett. Let's hear your.
Okay.
real quick.
No, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. So
on the Dream Warriors thing, when we did that, I used to love that movie. Like, I grew up absolutely. It was my favorite Elm Street movie. And then about 2 years ago, we did that episode of Purely and Simply Evil with Mike and Jay from Wham, and I went back and watched Dream Warriors. I hadn't seen it in like 2 or 3 years, and I was like, "This is stupid as fuck." Like, this is. I was like,
that's what I was getting. That's the
why
vibes
did I
getting.
ever like this? Like, I mean, I still enjoy it as a movie, but like, the whole like superpowers thing is the most absurd, random thing for that franchise.
think
Like,
the whole idea
it
of
was
like
so strange.
powers, like within your dreams, in theory
Exactly.
sounds cool, but when you turn it into like PBS kid episode, yeah, we've gone off the deep end. Personally,
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. But Brett, what do you think? What do you think about the whole Exorcist deal and the deal with the legacy sequels and horror cinema today?
Okay. Well, first off, I'm very, very excited for Mike Flanagan to be a part of The Exorcist. I think he is the absolute perfect director to take on this such very easy task to fix anything that is The Exorcist. Like, also, appreciate. I respect you liking it. If you like it, more power to you. To me, I'm on the opposite end of that. That I didn't mind like a kind of like a legacy sequel, but only if it's done right. But
Yeah.
like if we're doing like a Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, I'm a no-go on that. Let's just, because we're in a new day and age, we're in a new audience, and if you want your franchise to keep living, it's time to go back to basics for me and to do the basics with a newer audience for them to get to know what we got to know already with our classic characters of Freddy and Jason. So I say just keep it original with everything to the best of your ability, or just start a brand new, in a way, start a brand new legacy with a newer audience. If the older audience likes it, more power to them. If not, they got their traditional original that started it all.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, honestly, for me, I'm not in the legacy sequel camp for Elm Street and for Friday. I think Halloween it worked. Exorcist, I don't think it worked. Texas Chainsaw, I don't think it worked. But I think for Elm Street and Friday, I think you actually just put it really, really perfectly. And younger audiences today need to, you know, people who grew up in the 80s and 90s got to know those characters in a really specific way. And then, you know, people our age are kind of in that weird transition period between like the 90s and the newer generations. So it's like we kind of got to know that, but we also kind of got to know them when the 2000s remakes were coming out. The 03 Texas Chainsaw, which is my favorite. I love it more than the original. That's my favorite. That's my favorite horror remake ever.
Okay.
I love that movie. The 2009 Friday, the 2007 and 2009 Halloween, the 2010 Elm Street, which is very, very underrated, by the way. Personally, I think it's underrated. But we got to know that in a different way. But audiences today, like, I feel like, as you said, if you're going to keep those franchises alive, they have to get to know those characters in the same way that we did. Like, we even had Freddy versus Jason. Like, we were snorting coke at that point in, the horror franchise world. Like, and I think they need to, not literally, of course. I was not a 10-year-old sitting there in the movie theater like,
I'm gonna say that. My God.
But
is it just me, or is there really a CGI worm on the screen right now, or is it the Pope?
yeah. But yeah, I'm okay for a remake for both of those, like a true back to basics. Let's retell the original story the right way. Remake for both of those films. I'm good with that. So,
and
yeah,
I'm
I'll say Scream. I'd say Scream's a little different because, like, I feel like it's like a rare franchise that it works doing it like the legacy way. Where you introduce the newer characters, you use your legacy characters to enhance those new characters, so the newer generation can grow with those new characters.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they fucked it all up, but
Yeah. I think the whole lineage of the of the whole like Ghostface killers was pretty interesting, but again,
you could have fought the Ghostface character with the newer audience too, with it like being someone they can relate to.
Yeah.
I also
Anyone
just
can
feel
be
like I don't
behind
know,
the Ghostface mask. Yeah, kind of.
Exactly.
But that's also the caveat of Scream is like anybody can be behind the Ghostface mask, and I feel like lately the reveals have been so like, hey, it's the mailman, and it's like nobody cares.
Find that
Like, make it
away
like,
with it too.
yeah, like do something that's gonna like blow my socks off, not not just Joe Bob at the from the gas station is Ghostface suddenly, but I don't know. But we are also welcoming Nick from the Lost River Drive-In. Almost, not yet, possibly not yet. He'll be in a minute. Sorry.
Oh man.
I didn't realize he wasn't ready. My fault. But so we will welcome Nick from the Lost River Drive-In in just a second. But anyways, where was I even going with that? So we'll get Nick's take on those things in just a minute. I forgot where I was going with that point. But Dr. Sleep, released on October 31st. Came out on Halloween. Oh, that was a worldwide.
I thought it
release.
came out I thought it came out November 19th.
I see. That was the worldwide release. That's my fault. Yeah. November 19th was the North American release. Worldwide was October 19th. So that's weird for it to come out.
What was
After
weirder
North
is I
America to
totally
come out
guessed on the
after-
release date. I
Are
totally
you serious?
guessed.
November 9th?
I
What'd
said
you say?
19th.
Did you say November?
I said November
Oh, it was
19th.
November 9th.
So,
It
oh,
was
well,
November
damn,
9th,
I'm
I'm
10
sorry.
days off.
It was November 9th, but it's all right. So, as we said, written, directed by Mike Flanagan. I'm so happy that this movie was directed by Mike Flanagan, and I'm so happy that he's a human being working in this industry and in this genre right now. I think he is so... The thing that I like about him is, A, he approaches things as a fan. He doesn't approach it as, hey, let's just tell a story. He
Hey, let's
approaches
just
it
catch a check.
as... he approaches this as a fan and as someone who actually wants to tell a good story. And I think that's what set Dr. Sleep apart from other horror sequels is that, yes, it came out 40 years later. Yes, it's a direct sequel to a film that would be really difficult to make a direct sequel to, just because of the aesthetic and the weird things that Kubrick did with The Shining. But he pulled it off, and not only did he pull it off, he kicked its ass. Like, he destroyed it, man. And I think his directing style and the vibe that he was going for with Dr. Sleep supported, not only what King did with the Dr. Sleep novel, but also Stanley Kubrick's approach to the 1980 adaptation of the original film as well. So, Nick, you ready, buddy?
Yeah. One of my subordinate managers called me because she had to call the police about a customer. So that's what I was on the phone about. So, yeah.
That's not good.
Good
I'm
stuff.
sorry. I didn't mean to add you in like as soon as you were doing that.
I
Yeah,
had the
we got
mic.
the best finger right there. I don't know if you saw that. That was,
I had
odd.
the mic muted. You guys are good. I was like, I
You're
knew
good,
you
man.
were gonna bring me in the middle, so I was like, I'm just gonna keep this muted. So
Well, welcome, man. So we kind of just gotten into talking about this. Speaking of the whole Mike Flanagan thing, I know you're a big fan. We're all big fans. I just said I'm so happy that he's a human being working in this genre right now. How stoked were you about the Exorcist news that we got this morning? That he's taken over creative control.
oh, I mean, I was elated. I can't even. I did a live stream last year with my buddy Justin, and we kind of talked about. We speculated like who would be the best. This was before Believer came out, and I was like, Mike Flanagan. Like he's the only guy I would trust to touch a property right now, like The Exorcist. And I remember when it got announced, one of my subscribers actually commented and was like, "You said this like a year ago." I was like, "I fucking did, didn't I?" I didn't predict it, but it was like that was the guy that I would pick. Yeah, he's my favorite. I think he's the best horror filmmaker of this generation. I don't even. I think the only person that comes close for me is James Wan. And this is somebody that loves Rob Zombie as well. I do love Rob, but let's not kid ourselves and pretend that Rob's on the level of Flanagan. He's not.
No.
Midnight Mass.
He might think he is, but he's not.
Yeah. Aesthetically, technically speaking,
yeah,
Rob's high up there. It's the
Yep.
story and the script a lot of times that kind of not
Yeah.
so much.
If only we could just count Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 with Rob Zombie, he could be mentioned. But there's other
Yes.
films.
Yes, I agree. But
It's really hard to make a movie, and always include your wife. So kudos to Rob for being able to accomplish that.
yeah, sometimes you got to bring her back as a ghost with a horse, but
Yeah.
it works.
Yep.
So Midnight Mass is probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen, and I'm not exaggerating. That shit floored me. Like
Yeah.
it was so good.
I've heard.
guys-
Yeah.
You guys know how I feel about Dr. Sleep, which is what we're here
Yeah.
to talk about. But yeah, I was
Right.
stoked.
Yeah. And then we had also talked about real briefly, like, in this whole discussion about, like, the thing that I like about not only him taking it over, like, that's excellent, but also the fact that they're not going to do the whole, like, typical, at least not in the same way that it would have been with Believer and Deceiver and Kills and whatever else they were going to name the other films. But, like, it's not going to be a legacy sequel in the typical way that a legacy sequel would be. Like, Friday the 13th has been talked about a whole lot recently because of, like, the changes with the series and this whole, like, weird Jason universe thing that nobody knows what the hell is going on with. Like, do you think Elm Street and Friday should get the legacy sequel treatment, or is it time to just, like, reboot them from scratch? What do you think?
Friday?
Yeah, Friday or Elm Street, either one of the two, because they're kind of like, I feel like they're such on the back burner right now.
Yeah. Look, for me, I do feel like the thing that everybody's going to go to is probably the most likely when it comes to Nightmare specifically is the requel, legacy sequel type thing. I don't want to see that.
I don't either.
Now, having said that, would I go watch it? I would. Just because I'm kind of starving for Freddy right now. But I'm sorry, and I know a lot of people. Love her. I get it. Heather Langenkamp, never really a great final girl. Nancy Thompson, she just never was. And she's never been a great actress. And if you're gonna bring her back to do the requel, you'd have to bring Robert back, and Robert would begrudgingly come back at best, and you could only do one movie. It'd be very limited.
Yeah.
So you'd essentially be going, all right, we're doing one, and then we have to start all over again, and we'd go through another 15 years of Nightmare movies. So, yeah, for me personally, I'm good, man. I don't want to see that. It works with Halloween because, I mean, just ask yourselves. Yes, I'm a Halloween fan, obviously, so I'm biased. But what final girl in Friday or Nightmare is even on near the level of Laurie Strode? None.
Yeah.
So it works because it's Jamie Lee Curtis. It's Laurie Strode. Like, it's a big deal.
If they would have tried
to bring Chris back from Friday Part 3, well, let's bring Chris back. Yeah, that's really going to get asses in the seats. No.
Yeah. Yeah. If they would have tried to do the Blumhouse Halloween trilogy without Jamie Lee, it would not have worked. There's no way. I think her name being attached to that trilogy was literally half of their marketing strategy. Like
1,000%. That those three
more
movies
than
don't
half.
They don't make $500 million combined without Jamie Lee. It just doesn't happen. So, and that's another thing is like, I'm not disparaging these other ones, but let's be honest, nobody in the Friday or Nightmare series, Final Girl wise, is near the star that Jamie Lee Curtis is.
No.
It's just not even comparable. So,
Right.
yeah, no thanks on the requels, man. I don't hate the requel trend. I don't hate it. Some of them have been really good, but certain series just don't need it.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, so let's transition over to Dr. Sleep. First question I have for all of you. I'll kind of talk about my experience with this. I already have a little bit, but this is a two-parter question. So what was your original response to seeing The Shining for the first time, if you remember the first time that you watched the original film, and how, if at all, did Dr. Sleep change that or enhance that for you? Kind of. So what was your response to both of those films the first time you saw them? Austin, I'm going to throw it to you first, man.
Well, the first time I watched The Shining, I was probably 8, 9 years old. So obviously being that young, watching a horror movie terrified me. But over the years, I just really came to like and appreciate it. And it wasn't until probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I officially called it my favorite horror movie of all time for like 15 years. It used to be Halloween. much like a lot of us here, I'm a gigantic Halloween fan. It's my second favorite movie franchise of all time. So, but when it comes to Doctor Sleep, I've been saying this for the last few years. While The Shining is my favorite horror movie, I 100% stand by. I think Doctor Sleep is a much better made film, has a much better story. While the horror doesn't get me as much, except for one specific scene, which obviously we'll get to that when we get to that, but I definitely think it helps The Shining stand the test of time. I really think it helps just elevate the story, especially knowing where it goes. And I read the book, so I do think the book is fantastic. Obviously, it's much different than the film we got because of the blend of Kubrick and King. So,
right.
But yeah, I definitely think it helps watching it, as it's just a great, nice, long. I look at it as like a long 6-hour movie, basically.
Yeah, I dig it. Brett, what about you, man?
The first time I watched The Shining, I respected what it did. I heard a lot of the great things about The Shining, and I gave it a watch, and I was just like, I really like this movie, but I don't love this movie. So I think the first time I watched it, I gave it a solid 4 out of 5. And then I watched Doctor Sleep in the theater, which to me, it still amazes me to this day that Doctor Sleep bombed in the box office. It didn't deserve that treatment.
Yeah.
I think it was spectacular. And then as soon as I finished Doctor Sleep in the theater, I went back and rewatched The Shining, and it enhanced the experience with me because of how great of a job, and Brad, you alluded to it earlier, that how Mike Flanagan just does an amazing job interpreting, taking things from the book of Doctor Sleep while fusing it with Stanley Kubrick's vision of what The Shining is and combining the two together so perfectly. And so it gave me a better appreciation for The Shining, and that's where officially I put The Shining at that time a 4.5. Now The Shining is a 5 out of 5 for me. I think it's definitely one of the great 80s movies of all time. And I'll go ahead and say this, Dr. Sleep, I'm ready to say it. I think Dr. Sleep, the extended cut, is better than the original Shining.
I would agree. Nick, what about you, man?
So I saw The Shining at a young age because my mom, I've told stories on my channel many times about how my mom was a really big horror, not even, I wouldn't say a really big horror fan, but she was a big fan of the staples, Halloween, The Exorcist, not so much the sequels and stuff, but we saw those gateway level movies very early. First time I saw The Shining, I obviously really liked it. It creeped me out as a kid. Dr. Sleep was, I don't know. It's like a moment in time. I don't know if I'll ever be able to replicate what it was like being in the theater and having the recreated, though technically not recreated, but you know what I mean. It looks recreated, but they just made it look like night shots of going up to the Overlook Hotel, and you have the Overlook theme just blaring throughout the theater, and you know where you're going.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh my God. Never mind that you're almost 2 hours into the movie at that point, and you've got a really great character in Danny with just a great character arc for him.
Yes.
It's just a great arc, and it was incredible. I maintain that they made a mistake not leaning into the fact that this was a sequel to The Shining in the marketing. I think they paid for that dearly. They also made a mistake, maybe not moving the release date because it came out right after Joker, and Joker was a phenomenon in and of itself. So that movie was just killing it, and Dr. Sleep just kind of got lost. But all those things are to say, yes, I do find it better than The Shining. I think that the best version of the film is the extended cut because it plays like a book. And in chapters, and I love that. I also read Dr. Sleep. Interestingly enough, I actually found it to be a subpar book. I actually was kind of bummed out about it. I was like,
really?
The Shining was so great. Yeah, Dr. Sleep seemed like it was almost like, oh, I know what it was. It was trying to correct where he believed that Kubrick went wrong. I don't I don't fault him at all for that personally. I know it's sacrilege to say anything negative about The Shining, but the main reason that I maintain that Doctor Sleep is better is solely for the arc of Danny Torrance, and I think that in and of itself is far better than any characterization we got in The Shining, because my biggest complaint with The Shining has always been and will always be, you are trying to convince me that Jack Torrance is a guy on the mend. He was a former alcoholic. He's really getting his life together. He's got this new job, and he's slowly descending into madness. Bullshit. From the beginning, Jack Torrance is a prick. You don't like him from the beginning. But it's supposed to be this like, oh no, he's slowly unraveling and turning into this asshole. And it's like, no, he's not. He's a fucking dick. Like so that's my biggest issue with The Shining, whereas Dr. Sleep is like, here's a little kid who's traumatized, who's trying to get out of it, who falls into alcoholism and depression and his own demons. Oh, and then he gets out of it again, and then it all comes full circle. Like, that shit is just way more powerful than anything The Shining did. I'm sorry, Kubrick stands, but it's just the way it is.
I agree. Well, that's an incredible point that you just brought up, and I think that's, for me, part of why, like, the original film never, I don't know, Jack's arc in that movie doesn't feel like that big of an arc, because, like you said, he's kind of a douche from the first time you see him. Like, from the, sitting in the interview room when they're in the car, he just seems annoyed that they're even, like, there. There was never a point where I felt like, this is a really good dude. If you would have seen Jack, like, this really stand-up guy who embraces his wife and his son and who tries to be a good dad and is trying to do the right things, and then you end the film when he's, throwing an axe into Dick Halloran's chest, like, okay, like, that's a big arc, in the same way that Danny, starting out as this dude who's stealing money from, the chick he just slept with drunk, and, then he ends up being this really stand-up dude. Like, that's a big arc. Jack's arc doesn't feel that big because he was already kind of a dick before the Overlook happened. So, yeah, I completely agree with you there. But, Miguel, what about you, man?
Well, here, to say about what you said about Jack Torrance, I just felt like when it came with The Shining, Jack didn't feel any more than like a three-dimensional character. Like, there wasn't anything more than just knowing that, like, he was just going to be a victim of the hotel. So like whenever you say that, like, he didn't have that grandiose of a character as Danny, I kind of felt like what we got with Dr. Sleep, like so many other sequels, it's one of those films that enhances the original, because if we were to just have The Shining, we wouldn't have thought much of Danny at all, other than to just be a boy with some special little knick-knack tricks on his mind. But because of Dr. Sleep, we were able to further enjoy the storyline that we get with Danny, because it no longer becomes like a Jack Torrance story. It just became more of a Danny story over The Shining to Dr. Sleep. So for me, whenever I started Dr. Sleep, and I could see that for some people that saying that the Dr. Sleep is much better than The Shining. I agree with that sentiment, because for me, Dr. Sleep didn't seem all that interesting to me. It felt very much like a slow burn kind of film with a major climax at the end. But it was just one of those films where you kind of just got like slug your way through it at this point, because it didn't really feel to carry as much weight as it did with Dr. Sleep, where the story was continually propelling through the next chapter and the next chapter and the next chapter. Whereas with
Do you mean The Shining or Dr. Sleep?
With Dr. Sleep, like Dr. Sleep I felt like the story just kept going as opposed to The Shining.
Oh, okay.
Where it was very much.
I thought you meant Dr. Sleep was a boring slow burn. I was like,
no, I did not feel that way at all.
Really?
I for one actually loved Dr. Sleep. I loved the story. I felt it much more of a thriller than anything than a horror film, and because there wasn't many like jump scares or horror aspects of it to me, so I always considered it more like a thriller, as opposed to The Shining, where I considered that more closer to a horror than a thriller. But
Yeah.
overall, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed Doctor Sleep, and when it comes down to, you know, it being a sequel that made the original much better, I am kind of sad that they didn't do the marketing for Doctor Sleep as a sequel to it, because I think that did take a part in its downfall for it. Because to be truthful, like Doctor Sleep is like the sequel that like we didn't deserve to, like, you know, end the way it did. You know what I mean? So
I will say, Nick, you brought up a really good point, and it makes me think back. I don't know if I've really thought about this. So, we went and saw Joker in the theater. I mean, we didn't have the channel at this point. This was, you know, pre-COVID, pre-everything. But I remember seeing the poster, and it was the poster, the cracked red rum, that poster, and I was like, man, that looks pretty dope.
we didn't think
We're gonna
much
go
of it.
see.
We just
We're gonna
kept
go
watching
see Joker. Like, you know,
Yeah,
and
I
I don't know
remember that.
why I didn't go see it, but you put it perfectly when you said it just kind of slipped under the rug. Like, I don't know what it was, but I didn't go see that film in the theater, and I regret that. Hopefully someday, if they do kind of a double feature, The Shining and Doctor Sleep together, that would be sick. But
Be a long day.
that'd be great if they did that. That would be a long day, but it'd be worth it.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say, the first time watching Doctor Sleep, I don't hate that either, because it was during COVID. I bought it. I bought it on Blu-ray, and my wife is a big reader, and you know, she's read The Shining. She adores The Shining, like the Kubrick film, The Shining. I mean, she liked the book too, but it's one of her favorite her two favorite horror movies of all time are Psycho and The Shining. She's into the classics. But you know, we had watched The Shining, and then one night, like, we were at home, and we just turned off all the lights and made some popcorn and grabbed a couple of beers and put on the extended cut of Doctor Sleep. And I'm not gonna lie, it was great. Like, I'm not mad that was my first experience with that movie, because it was awesome, you know. And I remember when it was over, like when the movie had finally ended, we were both like, that was really freaking good. Like, you know, that was amazing. And I mean, from the minute I saw it, I was like, I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed The Shining. And I know that's like blasphemous as a horror person to say that. But I enjoy watching this movie so much more. Now, that's not to say that I don't appreciate or enjoy watching The Shining. I'll pull it off the shelf every now and then. Usually we usually have a deal when the first big snow we get in Kentucky, we usually throw on The Shining. But you know, it's the Doctor Sleep is such a more rewatchable film than The Shining is.
Yeah, and Brad, a big reason for that is there's something that Doctor Sleep has that The Shining doesn't have, and that is not just the character arc, you know, component, which I will hammer home until I'm dead, but the Doctor Sleep has a great antagonist. It's not just
ambiguous.
the Overlook. Yes, it is. You have the Overlook, and the beauty of Doctor Sleep is for 3/4 of the movie, you know that it's hanging there, like, oh, we're gonna go there. We're going to go back to that place, and you're waiting for it, but you're not like bored because you have Rose the Hat, Rebecca Ferguson, who, by the way, amazing actress, gorgeous, and she eats this role alive, dude. And I love so much the symmetry of obviously Ewan McGregor being in this movie and her line in this movie of, well, hi there. Like, it just, I'm like, oh, is that like an Obi-Wan? Like, but I absolutely love her in this movie. And I feel like this movie is nothing without her. Not nothing, but it's simply just a forgettable legacy sequel without
it's the icing on the cake.
Yes. And so the way she is, every time she's on screen, like, you gotta look. You gotta look. I love the mind fight sequence, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Like, I love that so much. And I love when she gets pissed off and she's like, all right, fuck it. Like, I'm going for this little chick. I'm going to kill her. I'm going to eat her steam. Like, it's just great. There's some of the complaints I've heard about Dr. Sleep are like, oh, well, they had to recast all the people and they don't look alike. Mike Flanagan made a point to say, he did that on purpose. You could have used CGI, you could have done certain things, but he said he almost wanted it to feel like its own thing. Like, and specifically when it comes to Jack Torrance, or what's supposed to look like Jack Torrance at the bar, that was intentionally recast because it was almost like Danny it had been so long, he didn't even know really who his dad was. So this is his idea of his dad, while also it's the Overlook's presentation of him. It is not it's not the spirit of his father. It's almost like a mind game being played by the Overlook itself. And I love that so much. Like it's
And with Henry Thomas playing that Jack Torrance was just another icing on the cake right there.
Yeah. But even with Grady and with the other characters, I mean, like it you know, if you've seen the special features, which I actually popped on the special features and rewatched those last night, they're great. Some really great interviews on there. Like, you know, as you said, Mike Flanagan had said, like, it was more about capturing the essence of those characters than it was actually like casting like you know, making them look. The look is not the point. It's the essence. Like, Danny didn't even have to really look at him to know that. Like, I always kind of got the vibe when he walks into the gold room and Danny's walking up to the bar when he goes to wake up the Overlook and Abra's waiting outside, you know, like, I think as soon as he sat down at the bar, he knew that when he looked up, it was going to be his dad. Like, I think he knew that. I think he knew that the Overlook was going to use that.
And can we talk about one of the greatest lines in either of these movies, if not the greatest line, which is, "Man takes a drink, drink takes the man." And I was like, yes, that is literally incredible. And no matter your feelings on Dr. Sleep or Mike Flanagan as a whole, that dude can write his fucking ass off. Like, he is such a good writer. Well, that is why Midnight Mass was so enthralling to me, because that shit, just its writing, pulled me in. The scene. Have you guys seen Midnight Mass? Everybody here's seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. I almost quit on it, but I'm glad I did.
I'm not going to spoil it, Austin, but I will just tell you, to anybody that hasn't seen it, midway through the series, there is an episode where a conversation takes place on a couch, and it is literally one of the most enthralling things I've ever watched. It gave me a panic attack. Like, it literally gave me a panic attack. They're talking about life and the afterlife and the meaning of life and what comes next, and it's so deep, and it's fucked, dude. Like, it will mess you up if you have anxiety at all, especially anxiety about death. It will mess you up, and that's just
great.
Yeah,
great. That's what I want.
That's just Mike Flanagan. That's Mike Flanagan. I'm telling you, that is Mike Flanagan.
And it enhances that scene.
I'm sold. I want to watch it.
No, and Nick, it enhances that scene real quick. It enhances that scene when you have Mike Flanagan's wife being the front runner of that scene.
Oh yeah, Kate Segal is just
because you could trust that woman with anything Mike Flanagan. So
and then the next episode you get a pretty surprising thing happen on a fucking boat.
Oh yeah,
it is so good, man. It is so good. I implore you to watch it. You gotta watch it. You gotta watch it.
It is the perfect show, Austin. If I could give it a 6 out of 5, I would.
And it's literally just one season. It's a limited series, so you don't have to go, I'm making this 6-season commitment that's going to take up the next month of my life. No, it's like 9 episodes. It's incredible.
See, I feel the same way how you feel about Midnight Mass. I feel the same way about Haunting a Hill House. Like, I found that show so fascinating.
Guess what, Austin? The beautiful thing about that is I'm a huge Flanagan fan, so I was on board with Hill House right before it came out. Bly Manor, I was all about it. Hill House was like his peak for me. He outdoes himself in Midnight Mass. I'm not even shitting you. He outdoes himself. Midnight Mass is the best limited series he's done, like, without question. And I loved the Fall of the House of Usher too. I thought that was great. Yeah, but Midnight Mass, dude.
I haven't seen
Christian. If you guys know Christian Hanna, I'm sure everybody knows Christian Hanna. He is very, very critical about some of these things, especially series. He agrees that Midnight Mass is like one of the most incredible things he's ever seen. Like, it'll make you shit your pants. It's great.
Okay. Have you seen Fall of the House of Usher?
Yep.
I haven't. I've heard incredible things about it, but I haven't actually
watched it.
It's Mike Flanagan. He doesn't miss. He simply doesn't miss.
I've heard it's very good.
I watched one episode.
Well, it's funny.
With the wife.
You're talking about his writing. Have you seen the special features when he's talking about like him writing the script and sending it to Stephen King? He actually said like, you know, because he was a fan of The Shining since he was 5 years old, and you know, he read the books and he'd seen the film and he loved it, you know, and he was stoked about writing the script, but he was also terrified because he was like, God, I'm gonna have to send this to Stephen King. He sent the script to Stephen King, and he was really nervous about what he was going to say. And Stephen King's response was, this is the kind of movie that is so good that they're never going to make it. And then he had the distinct pleasure of revealing to Stephen King, like, well, they just greenlit it, so we're doing it. Like, I mean, could you, from a writer's perspective, could you imagine sending that to Stephen King? And Stephen King's like, this is too good. Like, they're not going to do this. And then you're like, well, hop on board, man, because they're doing it. Like, that must be the most exhilarating thing. Like, damn, that must have been insane.
Look, and I got to tell you, man, I know everybody always shits on Stephen King, especially nowadays, because he's very outspoken about certain things that people don't agree with.
I like
That's not
the dude.
point. I love the dude, and I'm just going to say this. Yeah, he gets a paycheck, guys, so of course he's going to say this. You know, his favorite film adaptation is Doctor Sleep. It's his favorite one. It's his favorite adaptation of one of his stories, and he has openly
Which is funny
said,
because one of his least favorites is The Shining.
The Shining, yes, and he's said many times, anytime Mike Flanagan wants to adapt one of my stories, he can do it. Any story, he like after Doctor Sleep, that guy earned his trust. He was like, do whatever you want. Like, I don't come to me. Let's fucking remake Pet Sematary. I don't give a shit. Everybody loves that movie. I don't care. It's Mike Flanagan. Do it, and he'd probably do it better. I'm just
easily
sacrilege. I know. I love
I'd
Pet
like
Sematary.
I'd like to see a Mike Flanagan Cujo. He'd probably find a way to make it brilliant. It would be be incredible.
Don't be surprised if we get a new Cujo here soon, because it has been a hot minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
When did they greenlit?
I always liked Cujo.
Another Stephen King property.
Well, there was a rumor about the Dark Tower on Amazon with Mike Flanagan, but I think that's going to be on hold just so Mike Flanagan could go fix The Exorcist, because he's that man to go fix a major issue, and he'll go back to being his thing.
They called him and they were like, "Dog, you got to get in here. You got to fix this."
I was hoping he'd be at. I actually didn't go to Horror Hound, I think it was, not long ago, because I was going to go simply for Mike Flanagan. And he canceled, and I was like, I'm not going. Like, I'm not going, because I was going to go simply for him. There were other people I wanted to see, but I want to talk to that guy. And yes,
I know.
I'm going to do a shameless plug and be like, Mike, come on my YouTube channel. But regardless, like, I could talk to this dude for fucking days. Like,
he seems like the sweetest dude too. Like, just the most normal, like, kind guy. Like, in all of the, you know, in the special features, like when they were like there's video of him walking around in like the Overlook set and stuff, and he's just like giddy as hell, like just a kid in a candy store, like so just happy to be there. Like, and he's everything that you want in a director. Like, he's passionate about the project, he's passionate about the story being told, and like wanting to tell a good story, not just wanting to make a scary movie. Anybody can set out there to make a scary movie and to give you jump scares and to give you blood and to give you, you know, nudity and whatever else people want in horror nowadays, you know. But like, to actually sit down and be like, okay, I want to tell a good story. And I know part of the success was the fact that you're adapting Stephen King. Like, you know, the source material is there. There's a good foundation, a good base for it. But to take that, and, you know, I think, Austin, you had mentioned this too, with the differences, you know, Stanley Kubrick changed so much of The Shining. He really put his own twist on that film, particularly with the ending. Stephen King had even said, you know, where one thing that he has applauded Stanley Kubrick for is that the ending of The Shining feels cold. Like, you know, at the point when Danny gets out of the window and, you know, Jack is chasing him through the Overlook, and then when they wind up in the maze, like, it does feel like you feel how cold and windy it is in that moment. And he's applauded him for the aesthetic of that ending. But Stephen King has even said where, you know, Kubrick's ending ended in ice, and King's ending, ended in fire, Mike Flanagan was able to, even though this is a sequel to The Shining, he was able to adapt those things from the book and kind of interchange them with the ending of Dr. Sleep. So yes, you're altering the ending of the Dr. Sleep novel, but you're kind of getting to plug in the things that were left out of the original adaptation of The Shining, which is pretty cool. I liked that, and honestly, I haven't read Dr. Sleep, the book. I mean, I don't know, how does it end? Spoiler alert for anyone who wants to read it and hasn't. But how does the book end?
So where like the Overlook actually is, they turned it into like this big like campground. So it all takes place there at the end. So Danny
Crystal Lake.
Yeah, right. But Danny and Rose, they're fighting, and from what I remember, the spirit of Jack Torrance actually saves Danny and actually pushes Rose over the cliff, and she just falls.
Really?
So
I'm glad we didn't get that. But
I was about to say, compared to the
yeah.
ending of the film, much like Nick said, yeah, it's pretty underwhelming, but like still, to me, it kind of has a nice little turn for Jack, because obviously. That's the shitty part about The Shining, because when you hear the word The Shining, everybody thinks of the Kubrick movie. Nobody really talks much about the book.
The novel, yeah.
I will even say, man, I am one of few people that likes the miniseries. I don't think it's terrible. I mean, CGI aside, I mean,
haven't seen it.
It's atrocious, but I actually think it's good. It does follow the book pretty well, but it's just, man, again, another huge positive for me for Dr. Sleep is just that ending is just it hits, it's powerful, and again, another blend of Kubrick and King. It's that cold winter time along with the fire of the Overlook.
Yeah, it's a cool like parallel, those two things. I dig it. So in terms of the characters, we kind of talked about Danny a little bit. Interestingly enough, Stephen King, I didn't know that Stephen King was a major alcoholic earlier on in his life. I don't know if I knew that until I started kind of looking at what?
Who would have assumed?
Oh, I thought you said, who is it? I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of like the inspiration of Misery a little bit. So
Right.
It's Stephen King.
So, but it's interesting, like he had said in the special features or in an interview or something I had watched recently, that when he wrote The Shining, he was a less than functioning alcoholic. When he wrote Dr. Sleep, he was sober. So Danny Torrance in this film and that journey, he was like, I've been there. Like, I've been that person who is at rock bottom, who has got nothing left to turn to, who has so many emotional demons that like these deep-seated emotional issues have just completely taken control of your life. This movie is built on Danny's journey to sobriety, which is a huge parallel to Jack in the original film, because Danny in this film, like, you can tell at the point when after the bar fight, when he sleeps with the lady and he's stealing her change and he sees her son, and like, you can tell, like, he doesn't, even though he's desperate and he's at rock bottom and he's doing things that, he's not in his right mind and he's not thinking clearly, you can tell he doesn't want to be like that. I never felt that from Jack at all. I never felt like Jack truly wanted to be better for anyone. Like,
No.
I mean, I even think about, it's one of my favorite lines in The Shining, and it's I think there's one scene in The Shining that really like sums up the whole thing for me. People like to go on about like what it actually meant and things like that. When Jack sits at the bar and he's like, I'd sell my damn soul for just a glass of beer or something like that. And then he looks up and he's, hello, Lloyd, or whatever. Like, I think that moment, like, that proves right there, Jack didn't want to be sober. Like, I don't think Jack was ever really sober. I think Jack was sneaking booze here and there, even when he was quote unquote sober. You know what I mean? He just didn't have anything at the Overlook. And that's when he says, I would sell my soul. And the Overlook's like, all right, cool, sweet. Like, come on down, man.
That's a cheap price.
But
This is how we get
yeah.
in.
I know, right? Like, say no more, fam. But Danny wanted to get better. It's a cool parallel. And when you think about like what King went through and his own personal experience, like I like that this movie is built on Danny's sobriety and him getting better. You know what I mean? And as he's able to work towards sobriety and helping other people, and then moving on to helping Abra, you know, at the end of the film, he's able to put his own demons to bed when he burns down the Overlook, and they defeat Rose and all. Like, it's a really cool journey for his character. As well as for Abra's too. It's one of my favorite things about the film is the fact that his character is largely built on this journey to sobriety.
Yeah, but it's honestly probably, I just remember my recollection when I was watching it in the theater. Once the Overlook kind of took over Danny, having read The Shining, I knew what was coming, and I didn't. I mean, in the sense of Danny's fate. And I didn't want it to happen. I didn't want it to happen because he really had redeemed himself. And the difference between Jack and Danny is, like, we don't know Jack Torrance's backstory. So you can't manufacture sympathy for this guy. Whereas Danny, you feel so bad for this guy because, like, his childhood, like, that is so fucking traumatic. And, like, to end up at rock bottom and dig yourself out of it and, like, become an upstanding citizen and everything's going right for you. But at the end of the day, those demons that you suppressed and you thought you had beaten for so long are they're also your undoing. Is like, it's tragic. Like, it is tragic as hell. And you just feel bad for the guy. Like, when Jack is frozen in the hedge maze at the end of The Shining, the only thing you really think about is, like, oh, that's a sick visual, like, but, you know, and you're almost kind of like, oh yeah, he kind of deserved that, honestly. When Danny does what he does, and he has the moment with Wendy where she, like, sits down with him as he's, like, bleeding out and shit, it's just, it is so fucking heartbreaking, man. Like, it really sucks because, like, and I love Ewan so much because of Obi-Wan, like, so, like, I'm always going to love that guy, and
he's a great actor.
It broke me, man. I just remember being in the theater and just being like, why though? Like, why couldn't it just be Abra? Like, come on, like, we don't really give a shit. Like, it's like, not Obi-Wan. Like, come on, not Obi-Wan.
Kill the girl.
But it made so much sense for the story. It really did, because it was him essentially saying, I'm not going to let this happen to anybody else. These demons controlled my life, my entire life. I'm going to burn this motherfucker down. And this will never happen to anybody else again. And that's the greatest sacrifice he could have made. And again, Mike Flanagan, you're a brilliant writer, but your writing makes me hurt. And I fucking hate you for it at the same time.
Well, that's the goal, man. So
I know.
Yeah. Dude, I will say that would have been kind of scary as hell. Could you imagine if, like, you know, Danny takes care of Rose and, you know, he, you know, whatever happens, and then he turns around and Abra's standing there, possessed, holding the axe? That would have been fucking wild. That would have been kind of terrifying in and of itself, honestly.
Yeah, but do you really want to do two child-like deaths in one movie? Because unfortunately, from the
story, I said he had been the reason for two children death.
Fuck them kids. Fuck them kids.
Dude.
Well, I was about to say, it's like, unfortunately, the first kid death what made a lot of people walk out of the theater, which I thought that was just a gut-wrenching, powerful scene. Yeah. But
I gotta say,
you don't even see the actual kill taking place. You're just seeing, like, it is just enough out of frame. Yes, it's
but
terrifying.
It's the theater of the mind, though.
I know, and like, yes, it's terrifying. That's the fucking point. Like,
exactly.
It made me so mad too. Like,
you're
I was
supposed to hate Rose the Hat for doing that.
Yeah,
I hated that whole group. Yeah,
I was just so butthurt about it because I was like, guys, like, for real, like, we're gonna get out. Like, so many people have talked about that since, and it's, you know, it's been interesting to hear that from people. Like, I've had people talk about it in my comment section on my channel and stuff, and they're like, yeah, I couldn't believe that scene. That was just way too far. Like, killing a kid, and it's like, no, the fuck, like, it come on, whatever. I don't know.
Well, it's funny
Have they never seen a horror movie?
Yeah, watch Pet Cemetery. You fucking
nobody is safe, not even children.
Yeah, no one's gonna mention Gage at the end of the original Pet Cemetery. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Well, that kid, I don't know what the actor's name is, the young actor, but first of all, he killed the scene to the point of
Jacob.
Here, I got it right here.
I don't remember.
Jacob Tremblay or
Yeah, I was
Tremblay.
right.
Tremblay.
I was right.
What else has he been?
There you go.
I'm a
Yeah.
moron. I
I'm
have
not
Doctor.
surprised,
I
Nick.
have the.
He's in
I
the
have
Predator
IMDb
too.
pulled up.
Yeah, he's in the Predator,
Uh,
and he's also in that like one comedy with the three
Good
kids.
Boys.
And
Okay,
Good Boys.
okay.
Good
Okay.
boys.
Well, so it's funny because Mike Flanagan was talking about that, and when they filmed that scene, at first, everybody in, all of the vampire people are like, yeah, we're gonna kill the kid, blah blah blah, and he was like, the kid freaking killed the performance so much,
Yeah,
like
he did.
they had to stop the take a couple of times because like. The kid was giving the actors like panic attacks, like Rebecca Ferguson and all the like they had to like walk away and go like take a few breaths like somewhere else on set because he was so convincing.
Good on
And
you.
the
Oh, and
funny
the kid,
thing-
the kid gets up and goes, "Hey, where are we going?" Like I thought
Yeah,
we were
he
doing a
said-
good take right here.
He said the kid was like, "Woo, this is awesome! Like they're killing me!
Yeah.
Like this is awesome! This is so cool!" And everybody else is like mortified. They're brutally murdering this child on the screen. But it's harrowing. It's one of the when I think of like some of the most difficult to watch scenes in horror, like that is pretty difficult. And the way that they lure him in and like try to get them to trust him, and he's pleading, and when the thing about Rose the Hat is like, she's got this line to the kid when he says like, I think he asks her, he says, "Are you gonna hurt me?" And her only response is like, "Yes," and it's just so menacing and so brutal. There's Stephen King had said like when he was writing the book, like what he envisioned for Rose the Hat, like that is Rebecca, like what Rebecca Ferguson did with that role, that is like she is literally the embodiment of that character. And there's something, what makes that character work for me at least is, I mean, first of all, she is drop dead gorgeous, like she is gorgeous. And that there's something that's like equally mystical and witchy and weird and kind of creepy, but also there's so much like calm beauty to it too. Like it's this weird balance of the two,
Yeah, it's
And-
kind of like is that's how she attracts her like enemies
Yeah,
and
it's
all
like
that. Then
right.
bam, she hits them hard. So
Yeah. But, when she turns that on, like, it's like a flip switch. Like, she can be insanely brutal, too, But, yeah, that scene, it's still, like, I've seen this movie 10 times, and it's still hard to watch. It's crazy.
And they go into a lot more graphic details in the novel, and it's a hard.
What?
I have
yeah.
no doubt.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing that I had to say about those people that had an issue with it is like, y'all know how film adaptations work of novels? Like if you had a problem with what you saw in the movie, like they're just faithfully adapting the novel. Like that's the novel's fault. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. That's fine. But
I'm afraid to ask, how much more in depth does the novel go with his death?
it's pretty gnarly. It's pretty
Oh,
gnarly.
God.
Why don't you look up the passage online? It's pretty gnarly.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
And even
it's,
the scene too where Danny and Billy are digging him back up too, man. They're just
Oh, yeah.
they describe the smell. It's
Yeah.
like God, oh man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, like
Ugh.
the smell that the way he described the smell that he
Yeah.
was experiencing, with hunting a deer and catching it like, days later. Like, I don't know if any of you guys have hunt or like,
That was a
dealt with,
good
like,
moment.
dead animals, but phew, it's a smell. So like for him to
It about
describe it
takes
in
your
that
breath
way,
away.
it was really easy for me to be like catch like it to like process in my memory to know what that smells like. So then whenever that scene finally came out, when we see the hand of the child, it was like, oh fuck, that's not something you attribute to like a kid, a child. So it's like, oof, yeah.
Yeah. God, that reminds me. So somebody, this is completely unrelated, kind of. Somebody hit a deer on the way home the other day, and it was laying there on the side of the road baking in the sun all day, and I came back through with the windows rolled down. It's like,
eat it?
take your breath away. Like, it smells so bad. But like, that's
dear.
what I imagined when when Cliff Curtis, who I love that guy in everything he's in. I think he's a baller actor. I first saw him in as Travis Manawa in Fear the Walking Dead. but I dig him. I think he's a pretty cool actor.
I saw him.
Yeah,
Columbia.
when he's describing that moment, that's good. That's a really good moment when he's describing that scene. What did you all think of the whole vampire? They like that whole crew, how they adapted those characters. Now, obviously, admittedly, I don't know.
Knot.
You know,
Yeah, the true knot.
I don't. Yeah, the true knot. That's what they're called. I don't know how those characters were portrayed in the novel. I know that they purposefully tried to give them like they let them kind of choose their own backstory. Like they kind of reinvented the characters for the movie a little bit, and kind of, you know, like you get the idea that the old guy, what's his name? The car that Flick, Grandpa Flick, Grandpa Flick. Like he's like super, like they kind of pulled them from different moments in time. You know what I mean? Like I think that's. I thought that was kind of a cool approach to.
You watched Empire's Fall. I was like, holy fuck!
Yeah,
you've been there for that long.
yeah.
I was like, shit.
It's pretty cool.
Well, they primarily focused on Rose. On Snakebite Andy, and who was like
Crow
the
Daddy?
second in command?
Crow Daddy.
Yeah, Crow Daddy. Yeah. It was primarily focused on
Crow
those two and, like, what they can do. So, because they didn't really know what everyone else's powers were, honestly, or special stuff.
The ones that they focused the attention on, I liked. I really like Snakebite Andy, even though what she does is it breaks my heart again. Like what, you know, how she Cliff Curtis, you know, his scene, what happens there really fucking sucked. But and obviously we've already talked about Rose the Hat. Crow Daddy was fine. You didn't really get a ton, I don't feel, of like personification with Crow Daddy, but I ended up I was cool with Crow Daddy because I really, really loved the scene where Danny is shining through Abra and, you know, Crow Daddy's death. I thought that shit was awesome. I like in the theater, like the seatbelt line, and then bam, I was like, oh fuck yeah, like that was so cool. Yeah, they didn't have to flesh the other ones out enough, and I feel like that's the brilliance of it when you have the few at the top that are really, really good and command the screen when they're on it. It's okay to have some, you know, ancillary characters. It's totally fine. I don't need to know all of their backstories. Even what's his face? Robert Longstreet. He's grimy in this movie, man. When he's talking to the kid when they're killing him, and he says something like, he's like, oh, you know, you were really good today or the other day or some shit like that. And he's like gassing the kid up, like as they're gonna murder and eat him. Essentially, I was like, dude,
he's
you're
nasty in this.
Is that the guy from Halloween Kills?
Yeah.
Yep. That's Lonnie in Halloween Kills.
What's this
guy? And it's funny because he can play such a nice dude too, like such a kind human being in other roles. And in this, he was just kind of like nasty, like you almost get like Predator vibes from.
He gave
him,
the best.
You know?
He gave the best performance in Halloween Kills. Best performance in that movie is Robert
100%.
Longstreet. I don't care what anybody says. That dude was awesome.
Yeah, and it was like it was like a genuine, just a dad dude. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't overdone. It felt straight shooting normal. Like he was just a good dude.
The scene where he found Marion, and not to get off topic, but the scene where they find Marion in the playground and how he goes from like scared to like literally like trembling and crying and like freaking the fuck out. You're like, that dude's an actor. Like that dude, that's good. Like you don't see that level of acting in a lot of slasher movies. So yeah, he's great.
No, you don't. I was about to go somewhere with Snakebite Andy. I will say one thing that I would have liked to have seen, and I actually thought this the last time when Miguel and I did our watch along about a month ago for Dr. Sleep. I will say part of me was left wanting a little bit of a redemption thing for Snakebite Andy, and it makes sense. I understand why there wasn't. Like it doesn't ruin the movie for me or anything. I was hoping that because like what she's doing at the beginning of the film, like, no, it's not a good thing, but it's also not it's more of like a vigilante justice type thing, what she's doing with the dudes who are like cheaters.
Like a Punisher kind of character.
Like, yes, like more of a dark vigilante kind of character. And I wanted, like, part of me didn't see her character at the beginning as like entirely quote unquote bad. So I wouldn't have minded a little bit of a redemption arc for her at all, but they almost did the opposite when she shoots Cliff Curtis or makes him shoot himself, like it was like when her character died, I was kind of like, oh shit, there's that. Okay. Like, I wouldn't have minded a little bit of some kind of a redemption for her, but I understand why he didn't do it. I
don't know. It's kind of hard to redeem yourself from luring a child to his death,
Yeah.
So it was like one of those things. Like the second she took part in that, it was like dog,
She got hungry.
Shoot to the chest. Yeah. I mean, they got hungry. I mean, that's when you accept the pact that they have. I mean, you live your life eternally hungry. Otherwise, you're just going to, suffer and die. But
right.
And I love how they did that scene where the grandpa passed away, and they explained pretty much the significance of why they're feeding and all that, and this is what happens. I love when great storytelling from Mike Flanagan, writing out that scene. I thought that was a very effective scene.
It made me feel somewhat bad for Grandpa Flick, but then I gotta remember, we
kind of feel bad for a lot of them too.
So
well, I think they
probably were just manipulated to be a part of the group, possibly, which is what I think is what happened with Snakebite Andy. I feel like she was just manipulated as a young girl. It's like, hey, you want to live forever?
Rose the Hat could have manipulated me into going into the fucking truth. Are you kidding me?
I'd do anything Rose the Hat do. She didn't even have to use powers.
You want me to kill some people? Let's do it. I don't even need to eat their steam. I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real. If you saw her, you see her coming up to you in a dark forest, you're not gonna run. You're not.
You're going towards her.
Yeah, you're doing the opposite. You're gonna start walking towards her. Maybe
I'll be like,
trying to hug her.
How you doing?
I know she wouldn't be going after my shine. My ADHD blocks that from being seen by anything.
So Abra's character, I loved. One of my favorite parts of the film is this slow back and forth between her and Rose, because we see, as we just talked about, perfect point, that Rose the Hat is a master manipulator, and she's able to, she's been able to, we see her manipulating Snakebite Andy. We see her manipulating other people throughout the film. And she's trying so hard to manipulate and to get into the mind of Abra. And this constant power struggle back and forth, every time she gets closer, Abra blocks her out. I love that about this movie. When she's in the grocery store and she sees her and she blows her back from the glass, incredible. And again, it's one of the many reasons that Rebecca Ferguson absolutely just murders this role. I mean, completely kills it.
I mean, to see her react to Abra's powers, the way she acted and her reaction to her was so impressive. Just to enhance the idea that Abra is omega level powerful and her shine, because you have all these really cool people who can do these shines, be master manipulators and this or that, but then you have Abra, who is borderline matter changing almost, kind of with how she deals with her mind games, the same way that Danny is, which if I'm correct, Abra's much more powerful than Danny. Correct. So
I get. I kind of read it more as they were almost equals, but the difference was that Danny had suppressed his shine for so long, he didn't shine as strong as he once did. I read it more as that Abra was the new Danny. When Danny was a kid, how powerful his shine was, that's how Abra is now. And I fucking love after Rose cuts him and tastes his steam, and she's like,
"Oh, that's what I was gonna say."
Whiskey, it's so fucking awesome. I love it.
Well, I even love the moment, she, she's obviously appalled. From the very first moment, Rose, mentally interacts with Abra. She, she goes back and tells Snakebite, or she tells one. I don't remember which one it was, but she goes back and tells them, oh my god, that this
wasn't that Crawl Daddy?
Else.
I think
Maybe it was
Crawdaddy.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
when they're
because
in the
it's
RV,
like
you're right,
that
it's
was like her
Crawdaddy. You're right.
right hand man and all that. So.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. But she goes back and she tells him. But then after that moment, when she throws her out of her mind, essentially, and she trapped. Like, not only does she block her out, but she deceives Rose, which is something that Rose has never encountered. She didn't know was possible. I think that moment she was shocked. But one of my other favorite points in the movie is when Rose walks in to the I forget what the room is called, the all work and no, the typewriter room, all work and no play, mixed jack and double.
Oh, the Colorado Lounge.
Thank you, the Colorado Lounge. When she walks in there and Danny and Abba are standing there on the stairs and he's got the axe and she looks down and sees the typewriter and the all work, Jack's typing pages and things like that. When her and Danny have that interaction and he's got her in the maze and things like that, and they're essentially like fighting in Danny's mind, which is just sick. I love when I forget the actual line, but she says something like, how did we never find you before? Like, like she even recognizes in that moment,
Whiskey and alcohol,
holy
dog.
shit.
Yeah,
like,
that can do
like
that.
you are strong. Like, I think she realizes how strong he is in that moment. So I would agree with you, Nick. I never really saw it as Abra was stronger. I think maybe she can control it more than Danny can.
Well, I think that
he suppressed it for
she
so
welcomed the shine a lot earlier than Danny did. And
That's fair.
That
Danny
helped
ran from
her,
it his
like-
whole life. His whole life.
Yeah,
When he was a
yeah.
kid, he ran from it his entire life. Whereas Abra was like, "This is cool. Look what I can do."
Yeah.
Right.
I can
She
lift
embraced
spoons.
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can lift things with my brain. This is dope. But
Yeah, and
so
what was
I
great,
don't know.
Brad,
I love
about
that moment.
Yeah, and Brad, what was great about your scene too is after the whole mind battle, when she kind of like overpowers Danny, and when she goes up those stairs, exact detail. She walked up the stairs the exact same way back Jack Nicholson did in the original. Just a
Yep.
nice little throwback there, and that's what I
Yeah.
love about Doctor Sleep too. They did a great job when it comes to the term of like acknowledging The Shining and taking parts of that for like the traditional fans. So I thought that
But
I
where
always
is the
loved
bear?
that scene.
I was so sad.
The bear was there in spirit, damn it.
But where is the bear?
Yeah.
We didn't get any blowjob bear in this movie, man. It
Yeah.
didn't happen.
It was in the porn version.
I'm glad they left that. Yeah. That's in the X-rated cut of Doctor Sleep. But
See, it would have been
we
nice to
won't
have
go
the
there.
bear part of the group, Like, I wanted to see what his powers were. We obviously just were
Oh,
about
you know
to.
that one scene
Mission
where
Island.
his eyes got widened when all of them were on top of him? He's like that?
Yeah.
I bet he saw the bear.
Oh, my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. That the bear was getting a little touchy-feely on Danny at that moment. That's what he was feeling.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, man. Look, as far as I'm concerned, Doctor Sleep is. This is, if I had to give it a rating, this is like a 9.8 out of 10. Like,
Oh,
there
give
is
it the 10.
very,
Give it.
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
all right, I'll give it a 10. Fine, it's a 10 out of 10. Like, as far as sequels go, as far as stories go, as far as character arcs go, because not only the thing is, not only is Danny's character arc amazing, Abra's arc is amazing, Rose's arc is amazing. Even the side characters, Abra's dad, his friend, Cliff Curtis's character, the individual people, and like you had said, Nick, even some of the side characters and the extra people, the extra vampires, we didn't need to know their backstory for them to be great characters and for them to contribute to the movie in their own little quirky way when they're on screen. Not Scream. So yeah, this movie's a 10 out of 10 for me. It's an absolutely incredible sequel.
One of the best.
Ratings, go. Throw them in. Ratings now.
10 out of 10, man. So
10 out of 10?
honestly, it's a perfect film for me, man. I even look at this too. You don't even have to watch this as a horror movie. Like, honestly, in some weird way, you could look at this almost kind of like a comic book movie in a weird way.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah,
see that.
that's true. This isn't one I'd pull off the shelf for like, oh, I want to watch something scary. Like, this is something I'd pull off that I'm like, I want a good movie. I want to watch something like, I want to watch something with a really solid story tonight. So, Nick, I'm sure this is a 10 out. This is probably like an 11 out of 10 for you, right?
Well, if I could break the rules and not feel like a total turd for it, I don't think I have a complaint at all with the movie. It's I actually, this is crazy. I know. It's my second favorite movie of all time.
Really?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite movie?
Halloween.
What'd you put above it?
Halloween.
That's fair.
It's the only one that I would put above it, and I won't lie to you. There are some days where I'm like, there is nothing better than Doctor Sleep. It's just it's high praise for me.
Good,
I get it. But and we did an episode of the podcast like a year ago talking about hot takes, and as soon as the episode started, Christian was like, all right, start. And I was like, nah, Christian, and he's like, you know what? Wait, hold on. Let me just speak to the audience real quick. I know what you're going to say. You're going to go, what you're going to say. And someone's going to go, oh, Nick, you're so right about Dr. Sleep. And then he went on this tirade of, it's fucking bullshit. You're full of shit. It's not better than The Shining, blah, 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 blah. And then he was like, all right, now say what you're going to say. And I was like, yeah, Dr. Sleep. So
it is better than The Shining. It definitely is. It's better. But so yeah, man, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fun one, an absolutely incredible film. If you have not seen Dr. Sleep, I think somebody in the chat had said they hadn't actually watched it yet. I
watched it.
Oh my God, you've been watching this entire show and you haven't watched it? Jesus Christ!
Yeah, we just spoiled literally the entire movie for you. Yeah, still go watch it. It's 100% worth it. Watch the extended cut. I cannot stress that enough. Like the extended cut of this movie is. I argue the same thing about. There's two horror flicks that I would say the extended cut is like you have to watch it. Dr. Sleep. And the extended cut of the original Dawn of the Dead, I think, is a much better film. It's a slow burn. It's longer, but I really enjoy the extended cut of the original Dawn as well. So, but guys, it's been a fun one. Thank you so much for joining us. Real quick, drop your social media. Austin, we'll start with you. Anything you got coming up on your channel, all of that stuff.
Oh, well, you can find me on YouTube at SPC Unleashed. I did have Brad and Miguel on. It's been well over a year. We talked about Resident Evil for like almost 3 hours. So definitely if you guys like horror stuff, I do a lot of horror. I'm a Star Wars guy, so I do a lot of Star Wars and horror stuff is my main thing. I was supposed to be dropping a video today, but unfortunately just timing really hasn't been good. So in about 2 more weeks, I'm dropping my second specialist ranking. We're doing Treasure Hunters. So we're doing Indiana Jones, The Mummy, Uncharted, National Treasure, and Pirates of the Caribbean, ranking all those movies. So
that's a pretty cool theme to go by. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I dig that.
Yeah, last year we did sci-fi action, so we did Terminator, Alien, Predator, Planet of the Apes, and RoboCop. So that was like 32 films we ranked. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Brett, man, what's up, man?
With us, so you can find us at Good Real Hunting. Don't get us confused with eating like hunting channels like for deers and bears and all kinds of stuff like that. We're the movie
deer
part.
Hunting.
Yeah. Well, literally, for a while we got mixed up with that kind of audience, but we finally cleared that. Once you type in Good Real Hunting, you do find us.
I ain't learned how to tie a fishing rod yet, but I like movies.
So we hunt for them, so you don't have to. But no, actually, this stream is perfect for me in particular because what we're about to do in June is we're about to do a Stephen King watch party. We haven't decided what movie yet, which I'm going to try very hard on Dr. Sleep now because you kind of got me to wanting to watch Dr. Sleep again. Because at the end of June, we're doing our second ever Summer Slash tournament, and that is going to be the best Stephen King movie. So if you love Dr. Sleep in the chat, you just love Stephen King at all, we're going to be doing 32 of his best movies into a tournament to see which one is the best Stephen King movie. So we'd be happy to have anyone come over to Good Reel Hunting so you can help us find those good reels.
Hell yeah.
Dig it. Nick, what you got going on, man?
I never really know. My creative process is shit. I need to record something today. I'll do this. I'm not even kidding. Unless it's like a new movie, like I just did a review for In a Violent Nature last night. So because I went and checked that out. But yeah, so I believe coming up, I'm going to be doing, because I've been doing this like series on my channel of like worst movies in my collection, best movies in my collection, and people have really been liking it, and they've been commenting, and a couple people were like, "Can you do like a guilty pleasures one?" And I was like, "Sure." So I'm going to do that. I probably, and now I'm kind of wanting to do a retrospective on Dr. Sleep, so I might do something like that. I'm actually going to San Diego on Wednesday, and I'll be there for 6 days for my cousin's wedding and everything, and like a family vacation. So over the next 3 days or so, I'm going to record a bunch of shit to drop while I'm gone.
Sweet.
Don't know what yet. Some retrospectives, I'm sure, in there. So... and something Halloween related. I have to. I got fucking pigeonholed as a Halloween guy. So YouTube's like, oh, you talked about Halloween. Here's a couple thousand views. So like, every now and then I'm like, let me go back to the well.
Isn't it almost kind of annoying? Like,
yes
I
and no.
Yeah. I feel like I put my heart and soul in a video, and it'll do okay, and then I'm like, I'll do some random thing like for 5 minutes about Halloween, and it's like, boop, 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 boop. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I did
Cool.
I did a Mike Flanagan retrospective last year, which was like 27 minutes long, and I put a lot into it, and it got like 500 views, and I was like, God damn it! Like this is, and I get that. That's still 500 views, but I'm like,
right.
I could tomorrow take off one of my Halloween movies off the shelf, fart on it, and just upload it, and it would get like 1,500 in 24 hours. Like, I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
So it's just like, but I have actually recently really been trying to like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like I've uploaded every day for like the past 3 weeks. Like I've really been putting my head down and just uploading shit because like I'm not gonna let myself get fucking put in a box. Okay, yes, I'm a Halloween guy, but like I do other shit too. Don't know exactly what's going on. It'll be some more stuff with my physical media collection. So I'm excited to do that. And Instagram is the Lost River Drive-In, and Twitter or X or whatever the fuck you want to call it is the Lost River DR1, because there's an actual drive-in that has the Lost River Drive-In handle, which is total bullshit.
Solid.
That's where you can find me.
Nick, have you ever done shorts? Because I could see that could be a good transition for you if you don't want to do videos all the time, because shorts really help grow YouTube channels too.
I know they do, but I have often found that shorts are usually empty subs, and I
you know what? That's fair. That's fair.
You'll get people that are on the YouTube homepage, and they're like, oh, I like this short. I'm gonna subscribe, but they don't ever come back and watch your shit, and they usually
watch like anything longer than a minute. Yeah,
exactly.
I agree. Good point.
Have you seen, like, if you look at the YouTube analytics, it sorts them into two separate like piles essentially. Like your long form content or whatever is like a different pile of viewers than your shorts views.
Yes, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not, but I talk a lot. So long form videos are usually my strong suit. And one of the best compliments I ever got was from Lee McCoy at Drum Dums, who Lee and I have collabed a few times together, and he's like, dude, the fact that you're able to just talk and not cut for like 3 minutes, and you don't get like, you don't stumble upon what you're saying. He's like, I could never do that. I have to like write my points, and I have to edit and everything. And I'm like, dude,
I do that.
I shoot from the fucking hip. I have never once written anything. I just fucking go.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why I became a patron of Nick's, because I respect that about your YouTube game.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thanks, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I need to throw you one back. I said I was going to, and I fucking did it. I'm going to do that tonight. I swear to God. Keep your eyes out. You're going to see. I'm throwing you one back tonight.
Appreciate that, man. Like it means a lot coming for you. Like it truly does.
No, hey, my channel has been doing well over the last like 2 years, especially from where I was, and it's opened a lot of new doors, which is really cool. But at the same time, and this goes for all of us as content creators, always have that competitive nature. Always look at people that are ahead of you and let that shit drive you, because it drives me, buddy. I'm not going to mention names, okay? But I look at some channels sometimes and I'm like, I am going to pass you. I'm going to do it come hell or high water. And that's good. That's good. That is a good competitive fire to have. So
and of course in a friendly way too. It's not like this guy. So
like
more
Christian, I'm never gonna
blood.
pass Christian unless I have a fucking viral video. Like it's never going to happen. But I can keep closing the gap. So but friendly competition is always good, and never rest on your laurels. Once you hit 1K, you'll see a lot of people once they hit 1K, they're like, all right, I did it, cool. It's like, nah, go for 5. Go for 10, go for 15. Like, don't just sit on your fucking hands. Like 1,000 people want to watch your shit. That means you're doing something right. So get 1,000 more. Like, just keep it going.
We're 6 away from 1,000, and I'm like, let's go.
I'm gonna share this.
We're making it
as soon as this is done, I'm gonna share it on my community tab. Hopefully that'll do it,
man.
Hopefully, we'll make it a mission to get that 1,000 by tomorrow.
I used to like when we first started this, like, he can tell you, like, I still have like pages and pages of like notes on like, this is what we're gonna do, and like I envied like the being able to put a video out every day, because like I feel so guilty sometimes, because like, I mean, I'm sure you all know, like you're a dad, man, like you, like, being a teacher, being a dad, like, it's just like, I hate the fact that like there are nights when I'm like, I really want to get content out, but like I'm so fucking tired.
No.
And
See, Brad
never sacrifice the balance.
Brad forgets that
man.
we literally started this when people could not breathe on each other. So like it was during COVID.
Well, that's the thing
time
is
in the world.
We started and it was like we were cranking out 2 videos a week. We were doing 2 live streams a week, and then we fell off of that. And I'm like, I mean, I would never sacrifice my family time for it, but I just like, I look at other channels and I'm like, man, I wish we could get as much content out as they do. But then at the same time, I'm like, but I would rather get out things that I'm passionate about and that I actually put like work into and that I'm like proud of, than just do like, then have 2 videos a week and blah, 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 So I used to harp on the subscriber count. And like you said, Nick, I think it's important to have like that competitive, like, I want to be there. But I'm also not like, it's not. I'm trying to remember that it's not like,
Let it motivate cliche, you. Don't like, don't let it become you. Let it motivate you. But don't let it become.
And plus,
you.
Another thing too, it's like the views and the like reoccurring views of like them watching that particular video mean a lot more than subscriber count. Trust me.
Right. So
I mean, I've got like, look, at the end of the day, I got divorced, and part of that definitely had to do with the fact that like that was right when the podcast started, was like the last few months of my marriage, and Christian and I were banging that out once a week, and those are 2-hour-long episodes, and I work 50 hours a week, and I have a kid, so like I was sacrificing 2 hours, that I could spend with my wife. Now, granted, she's a demon, so like it ended up being totally fine that we didn't work out, but never ever sacrifice the balance, but also understand that if you do want to push yourself more to try to be more regular with your uploads, understand, coming from someone that is also a dad and works full time, and not only do I work full time, I'm the head honcho there, so as you saw earlier, I get calls even when I'm off. You have to understand there're gonna be some sleepless nights. Most nights I'm up till 2, and I'm up for work at 8 o'clock in the morning because I'm editing shit. Like my goal is to, in America nowadays, and it's really been this way for the last 15, 20 years, let's be honest, one job is usually not enough to really comfortably float you. So YouTube is, I'm getting close to where it's supplemental enough income to where I can live a little more comfortable. And that's been my goal this entire time. It's a hobby of mine, but nobody's going to complain about having a hobby that you also make a couple $100 every month.
Of course.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. So, but it definitely, man. And I'm not kidding when I say like, I didn't expect the camaraderie, because I started watching Dave McRae and the Wham guys, and and I feel like Brett and Austin, like I think our channels kind of started to come up at the same time, and the guys at the Slaughtered Lamb have always been really supportive of us, and like likewise they have of you all. Like, I didn't expect to have the camaraderie with all of you guys that we do, but that's been one of my favorite parts about doing this, is like getting to share this with other creators too. I love that about it. I absolutely adore that about this space specifically, and I don't think other YouTube spaces and other mediums have that. I think there's something special going on in the YouTube horror space. I think
let's not ever kid ourselves and lose sight of the fact that, hey, Brett, hey, Miguel, hey, Brad, hey, Austin, we're all fucking nerds. Let's just wear it proudly, we're nerds, and
I'm proud of it. I dig it.
Everybody else that we come across on here is also a nerd. Now, sometimes you'll find people that'll big league you and they think they're better than you because they look at the top line number of subscribers and you're not worth my time. And it's that kind of energy. One day you'll get to a point where your channel's not going to grow anymore because people don't gravitate toward that energy. They get to know you a little more and they're like, you're kind of a dick, man. Look, it's a really tight-knit community. And COVID, as much as it was bad for the world in a lot of ways, the economy and the dead people and stuff, it was also good in the sense that it brought a lot of people together virtually that otherwise may never have been. So that's cool too. So enjoy that. I'm gonna do YouTube until I'm fucking dead, probably.
Yeah,
so,
Nice. I dig it, man. We're both in for the long haul. So, but. Guys, this has been awesome. So have an awesome rest of your night. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at LTM Podcast KY. Please consider giving us a subscribe if you haven't already. Really like to hit that 1,000 mark some point, hopefully in the next couple of days. That'd be dope. So again, thank you all for joining us. We love you guys. Have an awesome rest of your night, and we will peace out. See ya. Bye.